Beth. Loved by many, I'm sure. Got a pretty good run in Total Drama Island, even confronting Heather, but got unfortunately voted off for plot reasons. Made a nice return in action, probably got far enough. Hey, maybe even passed the merge. She was a finalist! Alright, I know what you're all asking. Why would Lindsay winning fix Total Drama Action? Well, I find Beth's victory quite anticlimactic, as the only thing resolved is her self-confidence, which honestly she already did in Island. Lindsay, however, gets so much development this season, showing that she has somewhat of a brain, most notably as Admiral Lindsay. Now, the final few members give a few options for alternative finalists. I think Duncan is perfect. Pairing him with Courtney would make a less interesting World Tour finale, I think. And Harold's arc can be completed in a completely different way. Plus, Total Drama tends to make finalists of each gender. Revenge of the Island. So, you know, that's a plus for Lindsay. This is not, however, a what if Lindsay didn't vote herself off. I want to be very clear, this is a rewrite. If you are interested in such a what if, check out TD Wanderer's video, link in the description. Starting off, in Get a Clue, Lindsay wins a night at the movies with a friend of her choice and takes Duncan with her. This still happens since it makes a lot more sense now, but with one key difference. In an attempt to make small talk, Lindsay asks, "So, how are things going with Courtney?" To which Duncan pauses for a moment before replying, it's going. Afterwards there is an awkward silence, and the original confessionals play out, as usual.
I really should have brought Beth. At least we'd have something to say to each other. But it was a good strategistical, logical move, because it messed with Courtney's head.
Who cares? Not me. I couldn't care less. Not if I tried to care less. I do not care. No!
In canon rock and roll, Courtney gets so mad that she ruins the entire set. So once Lindsay gets her extra 10 seconds, the walls fall behind, leaving nothing else to destroy. In this universe, however, once Lindsay gets her extra 10 seconds, she throws a pillow or something of the likes at the walls that crumble on impact because of the damage Courtney caused. Lindsay gains invincibility for destroying the set on a technicality, making Courtney even more mad at her than she already was in canon. However, Courtney is not voted off here. Lindsay gathers with Beth, Harold and Owen, as usual, and tells them to vote Duncan off to annoy Courtney. Beth and Harold immediately agree, and Owen decides, like original, to avoid swaying the vote in anyone's favor because he's still the mole. Meanwhile, Courtney parallels Lindsay's scene, with her telling Duncan to vote Beth off, because if Lindsay can't go home, then she has to suffer here. The voting ceremony takes place. Beth and Harold vote for Duncan, Owen for Courtney and Duncan for Beth. But in a moment of destruction, Lindsay votes herself. With 2 votes against Duncan and 2 votes against Beth, this leads to a tiebreaker. The tiebreaker could be literally anything. Unless it's specifically the same trivia challenges as in the finale, I doubt that Beth could ever win against Duncan. She'd try as hard as she can, putting up a fight as Harold and Owen cheer for her from the sidelines. Courtney screaming at Duncan, "Don't you dare lose this!" And Lindsay just looks on, feeling guilty for putting Beth in that position for her clumsy mistake, and shedding a tear when Beth ultimately loses. In the end, Beth leaves the show instead of Lindsay in this episode. Crouching Courtney, Hidden Owen usually starts with Beth and Courtney going to bed just after the votes, with Beth being overall turned down, Courtney trying to form an alliance and Beth refusing loudly. This time, Lindsay is broken, refusing completely to talk and going straight to bed. Courtney has a confessional going mad over Lindsay. First she takes my boyfriend to the movies and then she tries to vote him off? Oh, she is so dead! Chris comes to the contestants and announces that today's reward challenge will be a girls versus boys battle, to which Courtney complains as usual. However, this time, when Chris announces Owen won't be participating, Courtney gets a new confessional. If I can sway Owen to help us in today's challenge by spying on the guys, I can share the reward with him to convince him to vote Lindsay off in the next elimination. As the challenge begins, Courtney and Duncan each become team captains and have their usual competitive confrontation in the push-up scene. This would give Lindsay an idea. You know, I'm not sure how much Duncan actually cares for Courtney, and turning him against her Now that would be a good revenge for getting Beth off the show. Courtney won't be all nice to Lindsay like she was with Beth in canon, but she doesn't need to. Lindsay's hatred is fueling her and allows her to make the same killer kick as Beth. Around this time, Courtney would catch Owen sneaking on them and ask him to spy on the guys for them. Owen would refuse at first because he really doesn't like Courtney, but she knows about the cheese seller from the Aftermath show, so she offers him a cut of her winning prize if he helps. Owen agrees and has a confessional where he says, "Chris is already paying me to be a mole. It's so hard to choose who to sabotage. Now the decision is practically made for me. I feel bad for the guys, but I really need that money." Before the fight begins, Owen gives the advice to Courtney first instead of Duncan. However, I don't think Duncan notices it, as he'd be too distracted annoying Harold. When Chris asks which team got the inside track, Owen answers the girls, as he ended up not helping both, meaning Chris would not get angry. The fight goes exactly as canon. Originally, Duncan doesn't dodge the kick, even with Owen telling him that, and the girls can't dodge because the remote breaks, so Owen doesn't actually impact the results at all. As such, the girls are sent to kitchen duty. The first scene goes roughly the same as canon, only they are much more eager to slice each other's throats with a kitchen knife. During the second part of the challenge, it goes much the same way. Harold and Duncan work together and bond, leading to Owen feeling bad for sabotaging them. We cut back to the girls in the kitchen, where the live octopus they are trying to cook attacks Courtney, so Lindsay takes an opportunity to leave, saying, "Aw, it already likes you so much. Guess I'll boil the noodles." As the guys keep progressing together through the challenge, Owen makes the ultimate decision that since he already has his deal with Courtney, he won't disrupt the guys' friendship like he usually does. Chris gets angry and cuts off the rope, letting him fall down the cliffside. In the girls' next scene, Lindsay takes advantage of the situation to steal Courtney's PDA. Courtney has a confessional saying, "How dare she!" And we cut back to Lindsay talking to Tyler over the PDA, showing that she both remembers who he is, but also his number. Without Owen's intervention, the guys don't get mad and instead win together by each pouring half of the water in the pot and drinking the other half of the chia. They then take the bonsai tree together and leave, winning the challenge. In the end, they share their reward meal, with Harold asking Lindsay to join them as he allied with her before. Lindsay takes the opportunity to try and get Duncan to join them in booting Courtney next episode. "I'm sorry for trying to vote you off, but we spent some time together this season. Are you sure Courtney is right for you? She might just be using you for an extra vote. She wasn't scared of asking Owen to spy on you guys to help us." "She did what?" Duncan, looking in Courtney's direction as she shakes hands with Owen, lends his own hands to Lindsay and Harold to accept their alliance proposal. In the beginning of 2008 A Space Owen, Harold doesn't fill Duncan's mattress with rocks. As per canon, Courtney ironically calls Lindsay a genius when she makes the same remark as Beth, leading to her replying, "Oh, I know I am. And like you, my boyfriend isn't in someone else's alliance." Courtney stares at Duncan with eagle eyes and has a confessional screaming in rage. Yeah, it's messed up, but listen, I'm not one for being bossed around by some girl that makes secret alliances against me to save her butt. The gifts are the same as canon, with Courtney using her gift to prove once more that she needs no one, Owen crying because he was a mole to Chris and now to Courtney, Harold getting his nunchucks, and Duncan getting scruffy. I think Tyler and Beth would have sent Lindsay a copy of that magazine she got into with a little message written from both of them. In the first challenge, Duncan prioritizes Scruffy's safety over Courtney, leading to her getting even more annoyed at Duncan for ignoring her, and then he solves the challenge by throwing Harold at the joysticks. But this time, because Owen doesn't sabotage them, they win instead of Courtney. They have to choose the order the contestants go in the next challenge without knowing it. Duncan would propose what Courtney does in canon, of letting the others go first so they can learn from their mistakes, but Harold would remember Chris talking about G-forces in the introduction.
The zero gravity is always a trip. 2. The G-forces are killer!
So he'd recommend a different order Duncan would inevitably agree with. Harold first, then Duncan, then Lindsay, because they're in an alliance, then Owen, and finally Courtney, who would have to take everything from everyone else. Harold doesn't puke and gets a time of 5.06 seconds like canon. After he leaves, Harold lets himself fall on Duncan, which is how Duncan finds out about Scruffy being killed smushed to his back. This feels a lot worse now because of their bond that makes it be more like a betrayal to Duncan, who in that moment ignores that it's an accident. Courtney tries to consolate Duncan, and then the same confessionals happen. Duncan threatens, and since Harold didn't put rugs in Duncan's bed, beats him up. Originally, Duncan puked because Owen went before him. Since that doesn't happen anymore, he probably doesn't puke, not getting the 10-second penalty, and maybe even staying in longer than his 23 seconds from canon. Lindsay accepts to do the challenge since there's no vomit in the suit yet, though she'd probably be bad at it, and she most likely pukes very fast, resulting in a penalty that ultimately gives her an effective time of 0 seconds. Owen probably does the exact same way as originally did, since the vomit Lindsay leaves behind realistically isn't enough to disgust him to the point of puking. He still farts a lot though, and lends himself a time of 10.03 seconds. Courtney doesn't end up giving up like she did in canon because she doesn't have anyone to quit with, and she knows she's in danger if she goes to elimination. She gives it a go and is probably decent at it since she is rather competitive and challenge focused, but ultimately Duncan would do better than her, leading to Duncan winning invincibility. Lindsay and Courtney have a fight because they've had enough of each other. Courtney is mad about how Lindsay turned Duncan against her, and Lindsay replies saying that Courtney deserves it after booting Beth. Courtney points out that Lindsay tried to boot Duncan, to which Lindsay wouldn't know how to reply, and the fight ends there. Duncan votes off Harold because of Scruffy, forgetting his alliance with them in that moment, which Courtney would support as she knows she can't convince Harold or Duncan to vote Lindsay, and wants to get back on Duncan's good side. Harold and Lindsay both vote Courtney off, and Owen ultimately votes Harold off instead of Courtney, because he needs her to win for the money. Duncan and Lindsay get their golden Chris awards, and then Lindsay and Harold are shocked as Courtney gets hers. Chris bids farewell to Harold, who doesn't come back to pull down Duncan's pants like in canon, but instead just walks away, looking back at Duncan apologetically and feeling betrayed. Owen sighs in relief seeing Harold get the boot before Chris turns to him and says, "And you are fired! What's the point of having a mole who spies for someone else?" The three competitors gasp upon hearing this, and Owen gets thrown into the limousine with Harold. Top Dog starts with Duncan meeting with Courtney to talk about the relationship, just not in her trailer since Lindsay is there. However, because Duncan has been slightly turned against Courtney by Lindsay, he doesn't stay up all night for her. Instead, he tells her that they are done, and he isn't going to let her boss him around tearing up the papers. Later, in the cafeteria, Lindsay takes her food and sees Courtney, who is sad, more so than angry. Lindsay, though she dislikes her, still asks Courtney what happened, so she explains how Duncan broke up with her. Duncan enters the tent as soon as she says this, and explains that Courtney tried to give me a list of rules to follow, of things I have to change because apparently I'm not good enough for Miss CIT. He goes sit with Lindsay in the other table. Duncan chokes like Owen originally did, resulting in Lindsay helping him, which makes Courtney jealous. Chris brings the contestants to the challenge, presenting 4 animals they have to choose from, which they have to train for a pet contest: a shark, a bear, a raccoon, and a fox, instead of a chameleon. Courtney takes the shark, like canon, Duncan takes the raccoon because it looks like it has a criminal's mask, and Lindsay chooses the pretty fox over the large and scary bear. During the challenge, Duncan can train the raccoon with relative ease since he isn't tired and Courtney and Owen won't annoy him. Courtney still fails at teaching her shark because it's a shark. Meanwhile, Lindsay is trained by the fox, much like Beth was originally trained by the raccoon. Duncan is rather impressive, but only gets a score of 8 since it involves something illegal or dangerous to Chris. Courtney's shark just doesn't do anything because it's a goddamn shark, and Lindsay wears the fox as a scarf and wins the same way she won the superhero contest, with Chris and Chef giving her full marks because of her looks. When they are dropped off in the forest, Courtney is dropped off at the river with her shark as per usual. Duncan doesn't let himself be owned by Raccoon, so he just forces it to guide him back to camp. I imagine the writers would still make a joke about a hidden fox society that Lindsay is guided towards, but instead of the usual pub, there's some sort of fashion contest with a white fox walking down the stage. She gets back to camp around 30 minutes after Duncan, which means she'd be tied with him because of her reward from winning the first part of the challenge. Courtney doesn't get there much later since she wasn't sabotaged, but she gets automatically booted as, on a technicality, Lindsay and Duncan both get invincibility. She angrily screams, swearing she'll call her lawyers, and as Chris and Chef force her into the limousine. Mutiny on the soundstage starts mostly the same way, with just Lindsay instead of Beth. Duncan makes some kind of joke in his trailer that no one replies to since he's alone, but instead of mocking the other guys, he has a confessional. It really sucks to be alone here. Harold could have been here if I didn't vote him off for stupid accident. I'm sorry. The challenge starts with them tied together as usual, though Duncan is more eager to work with Lindsay since they actually got closer during the season, unlike him and Beth. They help each other with the rope, but he doesn't stick with her for now because he can't risk losing the meal and thinks she'll just slow him down. The challenge will be the same, a race through various obstacle courses, skippable by answering trivia about the other contestants. Meanwhile, Chef tells Chris he wants to leave. Lindsay still asks Duncan to be Team Z, which he refuses. Lindsay then refuses to team up with Duncan, though more hesitantly than Beth, when he also asks her for it. She later struggles to go up the pole, but when she tries to get Duncan's help again, he tells her, "You got Courtney off the show, so you can't be that stupid. Just use that brain of yours and beat me too." Upon hearing this, she gets a confessional saying, "Admiral Lindsay, her hotness is back, and she'll win this game alone." Duncan gets up the pole first, but then doesn't get launched immediately because of Chris and Chef's fight, allowing Lindsay to catch up. Chef and Chris decide to switch roles to angrily resolve their conflict, as per canon. Duncan has to do all the challenges because he doesn't know the trivia. Meanwhile, Lindsay makes the same comment about Chef to Chris as Beth did before being launched. You might think that Lindsay wouldn't be as good at the trivia as Beth, but as a popular girl that's overall friendly with everyone, she probably knows a lot about the gossip. Chef still stalls her though, giving Duncan a large lead. Lindsay tells Chef that Chris misses him and would then freak out at Chris after Courtney's question, since she absolutely hates her. The same thing happens with our finalists having to both do the final challenge, since Duncan doesn't have psychic powers and therefore doesn't know what color Courtney is currently thinking of. Before they proceed, Lindsay gets another confessional saying that, "I don't want to win as Admiral Lindsay if that means leaving Duncan behind after befriending him. $1 million is not worth more than a new friend." And just like canon, Duncan and her help each other during the last challenge. Chef and Chris make up with each other like originally, whilst launching the safe that crushes Duncan. Lindsay saves Duncan, who just say, "If you didn't have a boyfriend, I could kiss you right now," making her smile as they go down the rope. Just like in canon, they tie in the race. The aftermath for Who Wants to Pick a Millionaire? Chef and Chris leave on vacation. Chef and Bridget, now in charge of the show that will decide who wins total drama action, try to stall the show to get watch time. Chris and Chef come back. Duncan has his usual compilation with the addition of him tearing up Courtney's papers as he breaks up. Chris then shows a clip of Lindsay using the other girls' makeup or trying on their outfits, because she just has the best sense of fashion anyways. And I won't go over every question asked since it'd be redundant and boring, but there are 3 that I will talk about. Gwen makes a question about the environment. Lindsay originally mentioned wanting to make a makeup brand where none of it was tested on animals in her post-elimination bonus clip.
And I'd have a line of skincare products named Lindsay! And I'd make sure none of them were tested on animals. Well, at least not the cute ones.
So she answers with that. Lashana asks them how they'll use their money. Lindsay would probably say that she'd buy friends with it, to which someone like Noah would reply, "Yeah, that's not possible, sweetie." So she'd say she'll take Beth and Tyler on a trip to France instead. Duncan wouldn't be able to piggyback off of her answer, so he'd play a similar trick to Owen Island, promising to use a part of his money to throw a big party for all the losing contestants to get their votes. Harold would no longer ask them to draw up made-up creature, instead asking a question to Duncan specifically. Since we know the voted off contestants watch the show, Harold would have seen Duncan's confession, where he says he's sorry. He asks Duncan if he truly meant what he said, to which Duncan scoffs and says no, looking to the side to seem tough, triggering the swinging hammer from an earlier Aftermath show. Lindsay and some of the other contestants go all "aww," realizing he actually is sorry, which visibly annoys him, but we see Harold smile. The rest of the questions would have been basically the same. Both get a winning ending, where the difference would be how Chris interprets Courtney's destroyed vote, since she wouldn't have a reason to vote for either. In Duncan's ending, Courtney tries to go in for a hug, but he just pushes her back and walks towards the others while celebrating. Lindsay is visibly sad for not winning the million, but then gets happy as she sees Duncan party with the others. Beth and Tyler then go hug her. In Lindsay's ending, Beth and Tyler come up to her and lift her into the air, inevitably falling to the ground as they are all comic relief characters. Everyone celebrates with them and then bursts into laughter. Duncan just kind of sits there, being both happy for Lindsay but sad he didn't get the money. Harold comes by and hits his shoulder in a friendly way to consolate him. Duncan goes for a punch back, but inevitably holds himself back, just laughing while thanking him for being a good sport, shooting a slight smile in Gwen's direction, who smiles right back. So yeah, that was that. I'm not sure if I'll do any more of these total drama videos, but yeah, it was fun doing this one. Check out DD Wanderer and Voice from Under the Cover, as I took a lot of inspiration from both of them, and let me know if you have any more ideas in the comments. If literally anyone asks for it, I'll even make a sequel to this as an actual what if in Total Drama World though. Anyhow, yeah, I still don't speak the outro in this channel.